Hey, deserving listeners, time to continue watching the trial. Let's watch.
He'd flick them at me, and once or twice tried to put one out on me, but mostly he would do it while screaming at me. He once did it right in front of me, screaming at my face as he put the cigarette out on his cheek.
All right, so it's possible, given the audio that we heard of Johnny Depp threatening to hurt himself with the knife, we see some indication that would back up what Amber Heard is saying, that he would self-abuse, use non-suicidal self-injury as a way of coping or communicating something or taking his anger out on himself or something, but it's hard to know. What Amber is saying now is that he would often put cigarettes out on himself in front of her. It's possible that it happened. I think what she's trying to demonstrate is that the cigarette burn on his face that happened around the time that his finger had been excised, that she is trying to claim that he did not only the thing to his finger, but also the cigarette burn to his face. I will say that it did sound pretty severe. When we first heard that account of how Johnny Depp had the bottle thrown at him, he claims, and then another bottle, his finger gets blasted off, there's blood everywhere, and then according to him, she walked up to him and then put a cigarette out on his face. And I will say that that story is extreme. That kind of cruelty and extreme abuse is at the top end of what one would see. Of course, at the very top, you would have things like murder and torture and imprisonment for several days. Think of the allegations against Marilyn Manson. So Johnny Depp's account is that happened. We didn't hear a lot of behavior in that category of injury to Johnny Depp and then just continual cruel behavior. It seemed very, in terms of the allegations against Amber Heard, very explosive, abusive, but we didn't hear a lot of accounts of cruelty, in my book, beyond a certain threshold. So when Amber Heard says that he did that to himself, it does make me wonder, could she have blasted his finger off and then he put a cigarette on his face? Because we did see him put his own blood all over the place, writing, and he would do this frequently, not just blood, but all sorts of things. And so it just raises questions, I guess, and there's no way to know. I don't think we'll ever know. And of course, the verdict is already in regarding defamation, but it could all be lies. One of them is clearly lying. I don't know which one. No one will ever know. But I will use it as a jumping off point that people will do this sometimes. They'll tell me that they did it. They'll say, yeah, when I get upset at my partner, I will harm myself. I will bang my head against the wall. I will punch wall repeatedly with the intention of not hurting the wall necessarily, but actually trying to hurt my hand. Of course, there are people that are trying to break the wall, but I'm talking about non-suicidal self-injury, or NSSI. Cigarette burns, obviously cutting, this kind of stuff. And there are various different reasons for this. In a nutshell, when we feel emotional or physical pain, we can reduce the sensation of pain by having the release of these brain chemicals. When we are experiencing an injury, our brain will sometimes compensate in the short term to try to lessen the overall pain so that we can cope with the situation, maybe get to safety, and then later on we'll feel the full brunt of the pain once we're out of this. It makes some sense that evolutionarily wise, that we are on the African savanna in the Pleistocene, we're being attacked by a predator, which we were hunted and eaten by panthers and such. Then we are injured, we're fighting back, and if we focus too much on the pain, we might curl up into a ball and get eaten. We have to get away, we have to think straight, and to be concentrating on the pain could actually harm us in terms of our survival. So we evolved, and a lot of animals apparently did, to have that response when we experience pain. So when we're experiencing emotional pain, it's the same feeling essentially as physical pain. We often will delineate between the two. We'll say physical pain is real and physical, and emotional pain is just like psychological. But the brain doesn't really differentiate differentiate along those lines. We could go into the brain science around this, but the point is that when we're trying to soothe emotional pain, if we create a physical pain that causes those brain chemicals to be released, it not only will attenuate the physical pain sensation, but also the emotional pain sensation. So that's why a lot of people will engage in NSSI. So if you or you know anyone that suffers from this, in the short term, maybe give more functional ways of coping, but long term, we want people to have less emotional pain and more stable ways of dealing with that on an ongoing basis, so they don't have those spikes in emotional pain that they only know one way to deal with. And the reason why I say this is because whenever I would be working with particularly teenagers that would have NSSI, the way that people responded, the schools and the teachers and the parents, would be to just take away that coping mechanism for the child. And I get that, but, and maybe that is ultimately what we do, but they would just think, okay, job done. I figured out what to do there. I took away the implements that they do that with, instead of thinking long term, which is, well, why are they doing it in the first place? There's a minority of people that will do it just because it's trendy or it's copycatting. It's a very, very minor portion of the people who do this. Usually those people, they don't do it very long. They'll just do it, 5 or 10 times, and then it's out of their system and they stop doing it as a trend kind of a thing. But the people that tend to do it over time, which is the vast majority of people, it's because they're suffering greatly emotionally, which makes me wonder about Johnny Depp in this way. I don't know if he was engaging at that, though. Another reason why people will do this is because they have masochism, meaning that they want to hurt themselves. They have a desire to destroy themselves, or they have a lot of self-hatred. Essentially, when you are abused, you have a variety of ways of coping with it. There's only a set of available psychological options to a child to adopt, and one of them is to say, I deserve it. And to be totally convinced of that, not just like, well, I must, it's no, I am a terrible person. I deserve to be treated this way. The reason why this is a coping mechanism is because you're trying to figure out, why is this happening? What's going on here? Is it them? Is it me? And there's no good solution, right? Because if I say, well, it's them, it's not me, I'm good, they're bad. Well, if you're 3, 4, 7 years old, that means you're completely on your own and you have no attachment figures that love you and no one to protect you. And that's a very scary thing to a young child. But if you say, well, it must be me, then at least you get to hold on to the fantasy that your parents are good, that they can protect you, that they will be there for you. And even though that isn't necessarily true, obviously, but you're picking the lesser of two evils, lesser of two very large evils. So for some kids, clearly, because we've seen it many, many times over, decades of study, that some children will adopt this. It must be me. I deserve it. And when you adopt that point of view, you believe it deep down, to the point where you will start to abuse yourself. You might cut yourself. You might punch you, when something is going wrong. Another aspect of this that is often present is they learn that when they're 4 years old and they're about to be abused, if they abuse themselves preemptively, sometimes the abuse will be mitigated a little bit because the abusive individual will see, oh, well, they're already doing it to themselves. So yeah, you deserve that. And to the abused child, it feels like, well, at least I'm in control of the abuse, and this mindset can carry on into adulthood in a very irrational manner, to the point where people, someone looks at them funny at work and they go home and they harm themselves because they believe that they deserve to be harmed. Of course, there's no reason in that situation to ever believe that they should be harmed in that way, but the quick reaction that people will have to instantly self-sabotaging or self-harming in a variety of ways is, when you look at it from the outside, it's like, no, you don't do that. You don't deserve to be treated that way ever. And it was just someone looked at you funny at work, or you went on a Tinder date and they weren't into you. That happens sometimes, that kind of thing. So the other element to this is that when we are being rejected or someone is harming us as an adult, we might actually harm ourselves as a way of trying to get sympathy from the other person. That's not a functional way, obviously, of trying to get sympathy or empathy or compassion from a partner, but because it was adopted when one was a child, one might exhibit that as an adult. I have no idea if that's what's happening here, but given what we've heard it's got to be something, right? It's either something along those lines or extreme cruelty to the other person. None of these options are very pleasant to think about.
I was going to pour you one.
I'm an alcoholic. You should.
Okay, so someone actually sent me a list of all the different audio recordings and transcripts with commentary, and it is very helpful. So I'm going to go to the list, and what I see is they said earlier that this was from September 15, 2015, but I see here that it's listed on this list as the Toronto ring throwing incident, and the audio clip is almost 19 minutes. And there are both Johnny Depp has a clip and Amber's clip, but I'm reading the transcript here. Someone else transcribed this, so I can't attest to its accuracy, but we just heard Amber Heard say, I'm recording this transcript, I'm just going to pour you one. And then Johnny says, an alcoholic, are you sure? So I don't know exactly what this is, but I'm so glad I have this list because sometimes I don't understand what they're saying or why they're saying it.
I don't have any control over how much you drink. But you don't have any control over whether I tell you the truth or not. Have you changed lately? Yeah, you've changed.
Okay, so then Amber Heard says, I don't have any control over how much you drink, but you don't have any control over whether I tell you the truth or not. Have you changed lately? Yeah, you've changed. So I think what she's saying here is, I don't have any control over how much you drink. I think she's saying that almost halfway to tell herself that, because I work with a lot of people who are in a relationship with someone that's in recovery or suffering from an addiction. And it's tempting, particularly if you're codependent and have those tendencies from childhood, then it's going to be very compelling to try to control, to try to point out you shouldn't be drinking or you should be drinking less, this kind of thing. Because it's true. When you watch someone drink and they are having a lot of problems from it, you're logical in saying that. And of course, you care about your partner, so it's logical to say that. But if you get in this power struggle with them, it's almost always destructive for everyone. So often people in that position will say things like that. It's like, look, I don't have any control over how much you drink. Another part of this communication could be to just set the ground rules here, just like, because sometimes if you're, and some of you can attest to this, if you're involved with someone that is suffering from an addiction, you almost get the sense like they expect you to fight with them because you might have had a history of that, or they have a lot of shame around their use that they project onto you. And so you have to sometimes tell the person, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do, and I'm not interested in that. So I'm just saying this or that. So I think that's where she's coming from. Then she says, but you don't have any control over whether I tell you the truth or not. I don't know. I would take a guess to say that they're having a fight, a minor little fight about whether or not he should be using or not. She says, but you don't have any control over whether or not I tell you the truth or not. So I think looking at through a pro Amber lens would be, she's saying, look, I'm going to say things because you can't just make me silent. I have a voice, and I'm going to say, look, I don't think that's a good idea given what's happening right now, but I don't have any control over what you do. In a negative Amber light, it could be her saying, you are just going to have to deal with the fact that I'm going to criticize you or put you down or something. But anyway, so then she says, have you changed lately? Yeah, you've changed, meaning that there's been some change for the better, which is a good thing for her to say. And then he says, well, your truth is really interesting too. So I don't know what that means. I think that means he's saying you don't understand the reality, or you frequently will blow things out of proportion. Given his testimony, I wonder if that's what he's saying. Let's continue listening.
Your truth is really interesting too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm the first person that's noticed.
So I can go downstairs.
Okay.
Then she says, yeah, well, I'm the first person that's noticed. I don't know exactly what she's referring to. He says, give me a glass of wine, please, so I can go downstairs.
Yes. Your escape route. I see.
And then she says, okay, yes, your escape route, I see. Meaning the alcohol or going downstairs.
Not escaping. What you got?
Oh, of course. 15 minutes, just like last time.
She says, okay, yes, your escape route, I see. And then he says, I'm not escaping. I'll be back in a few minutes. She says, oh, of course, 15 minutes, just like last time, I think sarcastically. So this is very indicative of the audio that we will hear in the accounts, at least of Johnny Depp, where when they start to have tension, he escapes. He tries to get away. And then it triggers her, and then she becomes hostile with him on some level. Not only escaping by going to the bathroom and locking the door, or escaping by working a lot, or escaping by using substances a lot.
If you can play, Michelle, please.
I was gonna pour you one.
I'm an alcoholic. You should.
I don't have any control over how much you drink. But you don't have any control over whether I tell you the truth or not. Have you changed lately? Yeah, you've changed.
Well, your truth is really interesting too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm the first
Give me a
person
glass
that's
of wine,
noticed.
please, so I can go downstairs.
Okay. Yes. Your escape route. I see.
Not escaping. What you got?
Oh, of course. 15 minutes, just like last time.
15.
Just like last time. When I had to pull you out of the bathroom. Well.
Again, this is Amber Heard's legal team choosing a clip from this audio to present to the jury. And again, I'm like, how is this helping? Because if I just heard this clip, I'd be like, well, obviously this is the Johnny Depp team. Now, I'm guessing Johnny Depp explodes at some point in here, but that he is trying to get away. Now, he's drinking, which is not great, but it's not a crime, right? It's not conducive to his mental health or his physical health or his relationship, but it doesn't mean that he's abusive. It can be a factor for sure. But anyway, so he's saying, give me my alcohol. I don't know why she's the gatekeeper to the alcohol. I don't know, but and then I'm going to go downstairs just for 50. And then she starts to lay into him about this and start a fight with him and get sarcastic with him. And then she says, 15 minutes. Oh, just like last time. And he's like, yeah, 15. And then she's like, oh, well, just like last time when I had to pull you out of the bathroom.
When you passed out naked in the bathroom in there.
Did you pull me out?
Tried to.
Okay, so she says, when I had to pull you out of the bathroom because you were passed out naked in the bathroom in there. And then he's like, did you pull me out? She says, I tried to.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get inside?
It didn't get inside.
Well, how did you try to pull me
By
out?
pounding on the door and waking you up every 15 minutes and then falling asleep next to the door so I could hear you snore in case if you vomited, I could call EMS if you ever stopped snoring.
All right, interesting. And I don't doubt that this is true. It's possible that it's not. He's not refuting it, by the way. He's not saying, what are you talking about? That you're insane. She's saying that he escaped from probably a fight that the two of them were having. And we could absolutely see this happening. According to his testimony, he drank a lot. And he also would take substances in addition to drinking that can also make one pass out. And he would lock himself in the bathroom, and then she would either want to engage with him in a hostile, conflictual way or really care about him because she cares about him. And so she is concerned about him. He's in the bathroom. He passes out, and she says, but I was trying to pull you out by pounding on the door and waking you up every 15 minutes and then falling asleep next to the door trying to hear you snore in case that you vomited. I could call AMS if you ever stopped snoring. Yeah, that is consistent with a partner of someone who has a severe drug and alcohol problem, particularly on the order that he does. I mean, he was taking opiates. I don't know about this incident, but he has talked about that, and he was taking other medications that can subdue one's breathing and also cause one to have those kinds of complications while one's sleeping. And so she's concerned about that in a legitimate way, also in a codependent way. But can you blame her if your husband is irresponsibly intoxicated and you know that there are health risks to that? That's a really tough thing.
Because you were afraid I was going to die.
I thought you would choke on your own vomit, which is very likely with you.
Really?
Yes, very
But I
likely.
vomit a lot.
Yes.
What?
Yes, you do vomit a lot in your sleep.
Really?
Oh, it's news to you? Then this is affecting you a lot more than I thought it was.
All right. I have to remember that at least one of them knows it's being recorded, if not both. So she could be playing it up for the audio. I don't know. But they seem to be debating the truthfulness of whether or not he's ever vomited while he was asleep. And she's saying it's happened frequently, and he's like saying it's never happened or something like that. So this is the problem area in which you have a couple fighting about the individual's addiction. This is a zone where I will tell couples to not go into, because right now you have Amber Heard, who is perhaps exaggerating a little bit. It's not uncommon for them to at least highlight the most risky elements of the alcoholic's behavior, and for the alcoholic, of course, to minimize, because that's part of the condition, and to deny, because they highly depend on those substances physically and emotionally, psychologically, and to threaten that from the outside is very threatening, and so they will fight against it. They also fight against it on the inside by convincing them of things that are simply not true. And this sort of conflict leads nowhere. It can often further entrench the problem behavior. So if I were there, I'd say, okay, remember, you can speak from your feelings, but you don't want to get into a power struggle or a debate. So a way to approach this, because what people will often wonder, well, I'm just supposed to not do anything? I'm just supposed to watch my partner drink themselves to death and I'm supposed to do nothing? I'm like, no, there are things you can do. But you have to recognize the landscape, which is that if you get into a power struggle and a conflict, it can make matters much worse, and it can ruin your relationship for no reason other than to just, you're spinning your wheels. There's no chance that this is going to work, really, or it's very little chance of it working. But you can say things like, okay, so I'm going to tell you, husband of mine, that I have observed you vomiting while you were sleeping, while you were intoxicated. I'm not trying to put you down, and I could imagine that you might not remember, because when you wake up, you might be also intoxicated, but I've seen it before, not all the time, but a handful of times. And I'm only saying this because I'm worried about you. And I'm not saying this to shame you or to say you can't drink right now. I'm just saying this is where I'm at. When I see you drinking even this amount, which of course isn't like other times, it triggers all those traumas I've been through with you, where I saw you passed out with vomit and I thought you might be dead, or you were passed out behind a locked door and I wondered if you would die. I don't know the chances of that happening, but I love you and I don't want you to die. And maybe I'm overblown with this anxiety, but that's where I'm coming from. You're in complete control of your life. I'm just telling you how I'm feeling about it. Instead, what's happening right here is she's trying to say, no, you vomit all the time. You're wrong. And he's like, no, you're wrong. And she could be right. She could be exaggerating. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt that there's some truth to what she's saying. Now, of course, if you're going to be super pro Johnny Depp in this situation, the conspiracy mindedness, which is possible that she knows it's being recorded, he doesn't know it's being recorded, or at the very least she knows it's being recorded, and she's trying to get out ahead, because their relationship will soon be over after this. It's only a year later that their relationship ends, right? And so I think both of them might see the writing on the wall that divorce might be imminent. So you can imagine some damage control of getting these recordings so that it can get out ahead of the allegations that she would chase him into bathrooms, so that she would say, well, the only reason I was doing that was because I was concerned about him vomiting. I wasn't trying to abuse him or invade him or force him to talk to me. I was only doing that because I was concerned about him. So I don't know, I'm just going to throw that in the mix.
Honey, you're so good. I hope so.
What, you don't vomit a lot, or you're telling me that? Look me, tell me you don't vomit a lot. You don't vomit a lot? You're upset with me. At least one that you try.
Okay, so I think Johnny is trying to either ridicule her or trying to lighten the mood. He seems to be almost doing like a Jack Sparrow thing, but he's playing around with her, and she's like, you vomit, and I only vomit when I'm with you, he says. Now he's making fake gagging noises. Interesting little moment here. I'm guessing he explodes at some point, because why would they be listening to this clip?
Johnny at the time was wanting to go and drink downstairs at a bar, and we were talking about 15 minutes because the last several times he had done that, it had been days. He'd disappear on a bender, get really sick, and you know the drill by now, having heard enough from me. So another issue that we were having at the time, or that he was having at the time, that affected me is that he would pass out and vomit. And vomited very, very regularly at this stage. He was obviously drinking again. I'd given up.
Okay, so there's definite credibility to a lot of what she said so far. I don't know about the frequency of vomiting. It's hard to know, but it's possible, absolutely. And the extent of his use, as reported by him, is consistent with what she's saying.
Stage. And what I had a habit of doing is turning him over onto his side so he doesn't choke on his own vomit. It's very common for people who do that to asphyxiate, at least that's what I understood. So the advice I got was to turn him to his side, put a pillow underneath his back, and turn his head so that he didn't asphyxiate. And one time I was doing that and he swung at me, and I told medical, and the advice, after I got their advice, I realized I can't say what the advice was, but after I got that advice, I stopped doing that. I tried to, as much as I could, leave him.
Okay, and it's absolutely possible when someone is that intoxicated, they often will have various different erratic behaviors. So who knows? It's also hard to know what the circumstances were around that. Was she being very forceful with him? And I don't know. It's just hard to know, but it's possible. Does that mean abuse? Not necessarily. It's violent, if it's true, but it's not necessarily abusive. Violent behavior isn't always abusive. We understand that, right? Doesn't make it okay. And I remember when I was talking about this earlier, when Dr. Hughes was talking about this in the same way, she was saying there's a difference between violence that is coercive and controlling and a part of an overall abusive pattern, intimate partner violence pattern, and violence that is more instrumental and circumstantial, situational. So who knows about that? But then she says that she got advice from people saying, well, if he's going to take a swing at you, you probably shouldn't do that. I understand why you'd be trying to turn him on his side, but if it's going to cause a problem, just back away. And so she's saying that she decided to do that. And, you know, that aside from the swinging part, it all sounds absolutely just run-of-the-mill in terms of what they both have said.
No objection.
All right. 356A in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle, thank you.
Lie!
And that you punched me in the fucking thing, and you
figured it out?
Okay, we've heard this audio before, I believe, or at least I have, and looking at the transcript info I have, this is from late September 2015. I have the transcript here. Amber Heard says, "And I lied." So just backing this up, because that's interesting. Why would she say that? He says, no, I said, hey, tell Travis just what just happened. So they're fighting about something that happened previously where she had assaulted him and he called in Travis to say, tell him what just happened. You just hit me. I think that's how it went down. And then she says, well, you told me to do it. And then he says, yeah. She says, you told me to. You said, go do that. Johnny Depp says, I said no, tell him what just happened. And then she says, and I lied. Then he says, that you punched me in the effing thing in the face. I don't know why they're going to listen to this audio, but maybe there's some way of spinning this.
No objection.
All right. 356A in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle, thank you.
Lie!
And that you punched me in the fucking thing, and you
figured
in the
it
face,
out.
and you said, no, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? And I watched you lie, and then
I didn't punch you, by the way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit
punched
you
me
across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
No, even a lot of fights been around a long time. I know. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't know why the Amber Heard team would want to remind the jury of this. audio. I keep thinking about when they make the multiple documentaries and movies about this event, the relationship and the trial. I keep thinking about what is going to need to be portrayed. You know, in the 2-hour movie, they're only going to have time for a little bit of the trial, and there are certain things that you just have to, you know, it's like with O.J. Simpson with the glove. You just have to have certain things in the recreation, or the news story will definitely have this or that. And this audio is probably at the very top of the list of her saying, I didn't punch you, I hit you. I'm sorry I didn't hit you across the face in the proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched. And then he says, don't tell me what it feels like to be punched. So I keep poring over this clip because at first it sounds absurd, right? And it certainly could be. None of us will know. We'll never know. But it sounds as if she punched him or hit him, and you could call it a hit or a punch, whatever, assault, physical assault. And she's debating the semantics of it, and she believes that somehow exonerates her, and he's pleading with her, just like, no, like, you punched me. Why are you debating this right now? And that's one way to look at it, and I think that's the way the majority of people see it. The jury might as well. So let's just hypothesize that he was the primary aggressor and the primary abusive person, and that she would become abusive at times. I know most people don't believe that. In fact, well, I was about to say, just by suggesting this possibility, I will be attacked online. I'm getting attacked online for no matter what I say. It is bizarre to be where I'm at right now, that there are pro-Amber people attacking me, calling me a misogynist, and the pro-Johnny Depp people are attacking me and bullying me because they believe I'm a misandrist. So no matter what I say, people on either side are not only attacking me, but bullying me. People trying to attack my credibility as a clinician and as a professor. It's surreal. I mean, I've been attacked my entire life on the internet, which is 14 years, but this is a whole other thing. You know, we saw the bullying of Dr. Spiegel, which was wrong, and you can criticize him as I did, but to directly bully him is absolutely wrong. It's considered, and I spoke out about it back then. I mean, I was openly criticizing what he was saying, and you could argue that it was bullying of me to do that. And I tried to be respectful and give him the benefit of the doubt when it was possible, but some of the things he was saying was just flat out irresponsible. But I never said he should have his license stripped away or that he should be stripped of his profession. I mean, I don't know what the rest of his career involves. In fact, someone who works with him even contacted me and said, you know, behind the scenes, he's just a regular psychiatrist. There's nothing really controversial about him. Anyway, so I am now experiencing a tiny version of that, and I am not comfortable in that position. This is not what I got into this to do. Not only to become a therapist, obviously, I never wanted anyone to hate me, and I was the opposite of that. To be a professor, I just don't even get involved in those kinds of situations. When I first started podcasting, no one was listening, so I didn't get any kind of response. As I started to become more popular, I rarely would be bullied or attacked because I just don't really get into things that attract that sort of thing. Although I did do episodes on Michael Jackson in which I was being extremely speculative about what possibly happened. I was presenting the data and talking more generally, using it as a jumping off point to talk more generally about abuse, to review the evidence that was provided by people and whatnot, and just, you know, debating it, whatever. And I had no idea that I was stepping into a battleground, and I got attacked by people to the point where I don't even have those episodes up anymore because it was really horrible. And, you know, you could argue, well, you know, you're on the internet, you're going to experience that. Okay, I am not used to that, and I do not want that. And I'll shut this whole thing down if I have to. Like, to tell you the truth, I have a massive impulse to just stop doing, just take down every single thing I've ever done in the trial. And I think some people have even suggested that. They're just like, you know, maybe just, if it's too hard for you, just don't do it. And yeah, I mean, so I'm not looking for sympathy per se. I just feel like y'all should know that because it's hard, and I find that it's kind of tripping me up a little bit as I talk about them, because I'm like, because I want to really be clear. I'm being attacked on both sides. From the very beginning, I've been sort of criticized on both sides. And that was like, okay, people think I'm stupid, or they don't agree with me, or they think I'm biased. That's one thing. But for people to go after me, right, to discredit me, to try to create a movement. And my perception around these different movements is the people don't have any idea what I'm saying. They're making stuff up. Because if you're a pro Johnny Depp person, I'm like, have you listened to my episodes? Because if anything, I'm probably biased towards Johnny Depp a little bit, if anything, right? And I try to keep that in check, right? So how do you possibly, if you're pro Johnny Depp, how do you possibly listen to even a half an hour of what I'm talking about? Or especially if you watch a couple episodes, how do you possibly walk away thinking that I'm somehow this awful human being? And vice versa. Like, if you're pro Amber, I could see being triggered because of all the things that are happening if you absolutely believe Amber Heard is telling the truth. But in several episodes, maybe more recently, because I'm starting to hear her testimony, but in the verdict episode, if anything, I was overly biased towards Amber Heard in that, you could argue. So I've done over 40 plus hours, I think, of material, free online, by the way, in which I am trying to go. Now, most of you, the vast majority of you, are like, no, Kirk, we get it. We don't agree with you all the time, but just keep going. And it's just you providing your clinical opinion. You're a professor, you're a therapist. You're not here to judge or to make a call. You're not on the jury. You're not a legal expert, and I appreciate all that. But there are pockets of that, and even if it's just like 5 people, then I don't sleep well at night. It's hard for me, and I don't know what to do about it. I try to sometimes I try to interact with them. I'm hoping if they just sort of see me as a human being, they'll just stop, and sometimes they do, and sometimes it just gets worse. And so I guess what I'm saying is that as I talk, if I come across as hesitant, it's because I don't feel safe. When we are victimized and bullied, we are scared. And we don't want to say things, and we start to lose our voice. We start to second guess everything we're doing. We start to wonder if we are the problem. And that's what I'm doing. And I hope it doesn't affect my content, but it will, and it has. How could it not? I'm terrified that even if it's just 10 people, I'm terrified that they're going to do something to me and my family. I mean, people have made threats. I've had stalkers before, still do, where the authorities are being called, and I'm a minor person on the internet. I mean, think about what it's like for someone, for the average large YouTuber, bigger than me. The law of averages, right? You are in contact with 10,000 people. Well, one of them is going to have some kind of a problem that will scare you, right? It's rare that people will do stuff like that, but if you are being observed by enough people, like, someone's going to try to get you. And again, criticism, fine. Say I'm biased. Say that you disagree with me. Say that you think that I'm wrong about my take on this. Say you think that I misread or misunderstood something. That's fine. That's fine. We can all say that. I can accept that. I can agree or disagree or be confused by some of that stuff. But the attacks, it's scary. It's terrifying. And I speak up about it. I have been, before it ever happened to me, I was speaking up against the bullying on Amber Heard, against the bullying on Dr. Spiegel, Dr. Hughes, I think to some extent. And the reason why I want to raise awareness for this is because you, as the viewer and as a citizen of the world, you have the power to watch it happen and walk away or do something about it. It's the same as when you're on the street. If you see someone being abused, a child, a partner, someone innocent being, harmed, you have a duty to do something. You don't necessarily have to get involved physically, right? Because you could be targeted yourself, but you should call the authorities or something, right? You don't just go, well, not my problem, I'm walking away. And it's the same online. And I feel like online bullying it just, people are so complacent about it because of 4chan and stuff. It just becomes, well, and I feel like a lot of people say, well, there's trolls. People are going to troll. This isn't trolling. Trolling is, it depends on how we define trolling, but the way that I typically define trolling, especially from the past, was people that are just trying to mess with you. They're just purposely trying to get under your skin, but they don't really care about you. They're just trolling a lot of different people. It's like they're doing prank calls, essentially. These people they're not doing that. They are actually trying to get me. They want to hurt me, and they're trying to use the internet to find a way to hurt me. And that is terrifying. These sorts of things happen all the time, and we need to put an end to it. I try to put it, when I see stuff like that, I try to fight for other people. I don't always, of course, but I try to. We have to do that. The other thing we have to do is we have to change the culture around this stuff. Instead of and this is what I used to do. I just discount, trolls, or just, those weird people online. No. We don't. If we're complacent, it just grows. It just happens. That's being part of the problem. To just say, well, they're just going to do that. Who cares? It's like saying, well, climate change is going to happen. What can you do? It's like, no, you have to do something about it. It's our moral responsibility. And so, I'm not saying necessarily for me, but if you see it anywhere, I want to change. I want to do my tiny little part to change the culture in general around this online, so that people that do that understand that they are doing something weird. It's sort of like, recently those terrorists that were trying to mess with the gay pride parade in Coeur d'Alene. We all understand that's terrorism and that's wrong. I don't know the details of that story, but there's allegations around that. And we all understand that's wrong. We don't point at that and go like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Now there are people. Anyway, point is we need to be able to look at something, and everyone needs to understand that's crossing the line. You can criticize, you can comment, you can call someone out, say, I think they're biased or I think they're wrong. You can comment like this, but to try to attack them, like you're going on a campaign to try to hurt them, harm them somehow, in revenge for what? I'm like, are you Johnny Depp or Amber Heard? Now, of course, everyone understands that it's them, they're being triggered. The people are being triggered by their own traumas, which I can totally understand, but that doesn't justify psychopathic behavior. It is harmful. Well, okay. So, psychopathic meaning lack of empathy and just total entitlement. And again, if I was just being attacked on one side, I would somehow, at least there'd be some logic around that, because, okay, well, clearly I'm biased. Like if only the pro-Amber people were attacking me, I would kind of get that, because there's so little refuge for the pro-Amber people, right? That you could imagine that they would just be attacking everyone. But I'm being equally attacked. In fact, I'll be attacked, and I will be all the way through the attack, and I won't even know which side they're on, because I can't tell from the attack what they're they're just saying I'm an idiot, and I'm like, are they pro-Amber or pro? Like, I don't even know, because it's not in the attack. It's not laid out, and I'm like, how can I both be the bane of, Now, of course, what some people say, well, it's because you're down the middle. You're providing this more level-headed response, which is apparently rare. That's another thing that people are saying. It's like, I like your channel because you actually are providing something that I don't see anywhere else, which is this kind of balanced approach where you're looking at both sides and asking questions. And so maybe that's why both sides are attacking me. But I just figure there's got to be thousands and thousands of other people online that are more worthy of. It doesn't make it okay, but there's lots of people that are pro-Amber, like really pro-Amber and really pro Johnny Depp on the internet. And I'm just like, why me? I'm trying to do my best to avoid that. Not because I'm making up stuff, but I literally just don't. I don't know what happened, so I'm always anyway.
When you fucking have a closed fist.
You get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you.
You can't
I don't know
deck
what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your toes?
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
That's the difference.
Okay, I think we knew this before as well, that how are your toes, that was from when he was in the bathroom and she was trying to get in, according to his story, and she said, ow. And then he looked at the toes, and she kicked the door in. The door hit him in the face, and then he goes down, and then she was hitting. And so I think that's what they're referring to there. And then that's when they asked Travis to come in, and she claimed she lied to him.
Fine, I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your toes?
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
That's the difference
you
between
poor
me and
toes.
you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start
You
physical
are
fights?
such a baby.
Because
Grow
you-
the fuck up,
Because you start
Johnny.
physical fights?
Yeah, I mean, every time I hear this, I'm just astonished. I've heard this audio a number of times, and every time I'm like, oh my goodness. This audio is just so, I don't know what to say. It's hard to listen to this, period. And two, hard to listen to this and accept a lot of what Amber Heard is claiming. There's so many elements to this, or the way it looks, it's hard to tell. Oh, what I was going to say earlier was, let's hypothesize that Johnny Depp was the main abuser and that she was occasionally defending herself or occasionally abusive. And she is saying, look, hey, you are abusive to me. And okay, fine, I hit you that one time, but that's nothing compared to what you did to me. Now, she of course never said that, right? She could have said that. Now, if you are a victim of intimate partner violence, you might be hesitant to point that out. You might be a little discombobulated, like, well, don't mention that he hit you because he's going to hit you more. But I do want to point out that I didn't really hit you, and he's using that one inch, because I don't know about them. It certainly doesn't look this way, and I'm pretty sure the jury didn't see it this way, but it's absolutely possible that someone is the main abuser, and then this person strikes back. And I've talked about this before, or defends themselves, or even just occasionally just like, I hate you, and actually will be the abuser. And then the abusive person will use that incident of, well, you punched me, so you have nothing to say about my punching you because that one time when you punched me. And then if you're the victim and you're still not completely gaslit, you'll say no. You'll try to argue it, but you might not be very good at it, and you might be afraid of actually really arguing it because you're worried that they're gonna get you, that the abuser is going to get you. You know, that's possible. It doesn't look that way. And like I said, I don't think it looks that way to most people. But I'm really curious as to what she's going to say to this. And I'm really curious as to why they even decided to re-listen to this audio. Maybe they think that they have a really good argument here that she can provide. So I'm really curious. But there's so many elements. I mean, so if we live in a universe where she is the main abuser or the only abuser, then there's just so many elements that this is quintessential intimate partner violence. The minimization, the not letting him talk, the aggressive, when you confront an abusive person about their abuse, they sometimes will get more abusive to you. And you're like, case in point, in her attempt, seemingly, to convince him that she's not abusive to him, she's bulldozing him and starting to and put him down. You're such a baby. You're a baby. And over talking. I mean, it's bizarre, right? But that, of course, is the syndrome of the abusive individual, or like one of the syndromes of an abusive person.
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You are admirable. Every single time. What's your excuse? When there's not a physical fight, then what's the excuse there? You're still being admirable, right? Just by running away?
Yeah, there's nothing in there that explains her behavior or frames it as defensive or situational. The whole thing is summed up in that audio. I don't know if it's a misrepresentation or it's just one example of a larger pattern that was much different, but it's all there. Them talking about how he is trying to get away. Who tries to get away? Victims try to get away. And her not letting him get away. Her beating him. Her verbally putting him down, calling him a baby for saying, you punched me. She says she lied to, they brought in Travis and she admits to, I think, or unless she's being sarcastic, yeah, I lied about that. And it's just all, they're talking about a moment where he was barricading himself in a bathroom and she attacked him. She broke into the room and attacked him. And it's just all there, all the elements. So if you wanted to really drive it home to the jury that Johnny Depp's claim of defamation has found a foundation, this is the clip that you would play. So I'm really curious as to what Amber Heard is going to say about this. So let's take a guess. She could say, and she said things along these lines before, she could say, yeah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things. I was triggered, but what was happening was that he was the main abuser to me, and so I was trying to point that out. But again, there's no mention of that in the audio. You think that would have come up, right? She's trying to say anything to get away from being seen as an abusive person or something, including, I didn't punch you, I hit you. So she uses that tactic. And then she says, well, you've been punched before. You've been around the block. That wasn't like that. And it's like, well, so you're claiming I've been punched in a more intense way previously, that somehow makes that punch not a punch. And then she says, you're a baby. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't hit you in the... I mean, she's pulling out all the stops. You would think that if in there was the truth of, well, you hit me 10 times for every time I hit you, you think that would have come out of the ammo bag that she was using to throw whatever she could at the wall to try to defend herself, right? So, yeah, it's really just an awful... And, you know, I can see why people get triggered by this, because if you empathize or identify with Johnny Depp, which I know a lot of people do, and it doesn't go by gender. I think there's a little tendency for men to identify and vice versa with Johnny Depp and vice versa. But I know a lot of women who identify with Johnny Depp, and they are absolutely triggered by Amber Heard. A lot of heterosexual women who have been in heterosexual abusive relationships. I'm trying to think if there are any men who identify with Amber Heard. I mean, they must be out there. The point is that it's not men versus women is the point. It is whoever seems to you to be telling the truth about the abuse, and if you have been abused, then you will identify with that person.
Amber, please explain to the jury what's transpiring in that audio recording, what that's about.
Well, there's two different situations that we're referencing in this fight, two different altercations between Johnny and I involving the door. The first of which we first start talking about, where I'm talking about hitting him, I am talking about what that conversation is about the disparity. The disparity between Johnny and I in our physical fights, the disparity of how he would proactively punch me and I would have to resort to reactively hitting him.
Yeah, I thought but where's the evidence? It's not in the recording. And where's the evidence of that? And so it's possible. It's absolutely possible that this is true, that what she's saying, and it just was never captured on audio, and there's never been solid physical evidence. There has been some evidence of facial bruising, which I think is absolutely possible, for sure. Could it have been faked? Yeah, but I don't know. That seems not likely, but who knows? So is that possible? Yeah, but if you were trying to spin it in a way that makes you look better, then yeah, this is what you'd say. But the way she's even wording this, it's like right off the bat, she's reading out of a textbook. And if you were coached or you read up, this is the kind of stuff you... so I always use this as a jumping off point. To the victims that I've talked to who have occasionally been violent back and defensively or situationally or abusively, the way that they typically talk, they will say things like, well, I'm trying to actually think, because usually these individuals are in the abusive or were recently in the abusive, so they're still gaslit to a large extent. So that would make sense for Amber Heard, because she said a lot of years to, if she were abused, to have a more accurate perspective on what happened to her. But I would hear, so if I had that, if someone was recalling a previous situation, they would say that they sometimes just lost it. There'd be some kind of language around that, like, yeah, sometimes I just couldn't take it anymore, and I would push them, or I would punch them back, or I was just so frustrated and I stooped to their level. They were going to punch me, so I get, some kind of that, not this language. Now, does this mean she's lying? No.
I am talking about what that conversation is about the disparity. the disparity between Johnny and I in our physical fights, the disparity of how he would proactively punch me and I would have to resort to reactively hitting him. I am talking about the difference between a punch, which Johnny did often, and me having to hit him in my defense.
Right. That's more compelling. And that's what I thought she would say. That would be the only defense that I could think of that I predicted she might say, which is I'm delineating between punching and hitting because he punches me, I hit him. I never punched him because I don't have the physical power to do that or the intention or something. He brutalized me with punches. I slapped him. We understand between the two of us what a punch is because that's what he does to me. Okay, but again, you'd think that would have come up in the audio at some point because the audio recording's 4.5 hours long. Now, you could make an argument if you're Amber Heard that, look, I didn't want to ruin his career and I knew that these audio recordings might be public at some point, so I was trying to protect him on the audio, but do people really believe that to be true? Anyway.
I know the difference between those two, and I'm highlighting the difference between those two. Even if he wasn't twice my size, they're very different, and that's what I'm pointing out to him. The situation that involved, the context of that is, it happened in our bedroom up in Penthouse 3. You've heard us talk about that place. And I was trying to shut a door, our bedroom door actually. I was trying to barricade myself behind this door, and Johnny was trying to get through the door. He was using his body and his limbs to try to bust through the door as I was trying to keep it closed because I knew what he would do to me when he got to me on the other side. And I was hitting his arms, his body, as he was trying to prevent me from closing the door.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's possible, but given all of the audio, all you're talking about is him getting away, him going into the bathroom. There's no reference of anything in the audio about what she's saying. Nothing. In fact, so much evidence to the contrary. And so if you are the jury, if you're a juror and you're hearing this, you're like, what? There's just so much evidence that she's lying. She might not be lying, but there's so much evidence that she's lying. It's complete. Now, if she had some explanation around this, like if she said something like, well, yeah, in that recording, I didn't mention this, and this because I didn't want to hurt his feelings, or just some explanation, because when you match up, and what people are saying in this transcript and the commentary is this story is different from previous stories. Of course, the jury doesn't necessarily know that, but yeah, it's just so hard to believe. Either the evidence is so weirdly stacked against her, unfairly against her, or she's lying. It's one of the two, because there's so many elements of this that you're just like, what? How do you possibly say that you're trying to debate punching and hitting because he was the primary aggressor when that's never mentioned? In fact, there's opposite things being mentioned. And you're admitting all these sorts of, and you're minimizing it, and you're totally the overpowering person in this conversation. Clearly, he's being verbally abusive as well, but you're dominating him completely in this conversation. You're calling him a baby. Like, what? That's the way a victim talks to their perpetrator. Oh, you're a baby. It's possible, but it's not likely. And there's so much around this that is, it's astonishing. It's almost like she just should have not even gone down this road. She just should have avoided the whole thing. Like, she could have, if Cross showed this to her, because they can do that, then she could say, look, that was a long conversation. We were talking about a lot of different things, and the entirety of our relationship wasn't really summed up in that audio recording. So are there things in there that indicate that I hit him and this sort of thing? Yeah, but that audio recording doesn't represent everything that happened. Plus, I didn't want to mention it. There's ways of just sort of responding very quickly to Cross, but to lean into this. And then it also makes me wonder, again, if she's lying, which I don't know. Then the way she's doing this, it either says that she's trying to appear confident so that she can win the case, which of course you would want to do, or two, she believes this to be true, which, if it is a lie and believes it to be true, that is part of the histrionic syndrome potentially. Or three, she's so entitled, she feels so entitled that she doesn't even care about how it looks. I don't know, but I have treated people before. They're not always histrionic, but they're individuals who will pathologically lie. And the brazenness, is that a word? The confidence in which they will lie straight to your face or to others and just be completely confident and impervious to criticism or any kind of statement that they're lying. They'll just be like, what are you talking about? They'll push you down the stairs and you'll come back upstairs. You'll be like, you pushed me down the stairs. You're like, no, I did. What are you talking about? I'm like, you just pushed. It's on the video camera. Let me show. That's not me. That's doctored. It's like, I've been with people like that before, and they often do come from severe abuse. It is weird. Because it's one thing to lie because you're trying to get away from with something. It's another thing when you kind of feel like the lies are coming from this semi-delusional place. Like they've cut themselves off from the truth, and they're looking at the truth, and they just deny it happening right in front of them. It's interesting. And so I don't want to say that about Amber. I can't know that. It seems most likely that if she is lying, or at least spinning, that she's just trying to come across as confident so it can be convincing to the jury. I want to point out to the pro-Amber people, don't bully me, by the way, it's possible she's telling the truth. I've been saying that from the beginning, and when I say that, the pro-Depp people are going to attack me because I said it's possible, Like someone was saying, how do you possibly allow for the possibility that Amber Heard is telling the truth when all of her lies have been debunked? As if it's been scientifically debunked, like the way that we debunk the theory that the moon is made out of cheese. That used to be believed by some people as probably a joke. You know what I'm saying? Or that there were aliens on Mars. That's been debunked scientifically. No one has scientifically debunked Amber Heard's statements. There has been a lot of evidence and a lot of points being made to convince people that she's lying, but no one knows who's lying and who's telling the truth. Nobody knows except for the two of them, and they might not even know because of their issues, because of either the intoxication and the memory issues or because of personality disorder. There might be literally no one on the planet that knows what happened scientifically.
And that is a separate incident that we later talk about in the second half of that recording where we're talking about my toes. That involved a different incident, which was a bathroom door. And it was one of those ones that he was passing out in. And I could hear him passing out, or what it sounded like to me behind a closed doors passing out. I heard a thud. I heard a lot of commotion. I heard a glass break. And I hear what sounds like his body falling against the bathroom door. I open it to check on him, as I was accustomed to doing at that time. Johnny violently reacted to me opening the door.
This story, it just sounds so dubious. I mean, the attempt, it could be true. And I've been saying that from the beginning, even before I was starting to get bullied. I've been saying, it's possible. I've learned that countless times with clients, that I will believe something or something seems to be true, and then later on I'm like, I find something out was completely different, and I'm like, wow. It's interesting how easy it is to be convinced of something and then later realize it was all something else. So I don't know, but the way, and I could be biased just because of all the evidence against her, but the way she tells this story, it just seems like she's trying to massage a situation or shoehorn in this narrative that just doesn't make any sense. So according to her, it's another moment where he's passed out behind a closed door in a bathroom, and she hears a thud or something, and then he falls against the door. That's her claim, that he fell against the door, and then she tried to break in the door because she was trying to save his life, and her toe got injured, and then he attacked her. Because she's saying there are 2 toe incidents. And I don't know, but if she's lying, I think she's trying to point out that, okay, I have to admit to this toe thing because I'm basically saying this other story. So I'll tell this other story anyway. But so listen to this detail. Again, even if this were true, you would think you would say it in a different way. You would say something like, there's one time he passed out and I heard, I was scared and I knew I wasn't supposed to go in, but I just needed to know. And so I kicked the door in because it was locked. I was banging on the door, and he was unresponsive, and I don't even as I say that, I'm like, really, like, this is. Anyway, so let's rewind this.
Behind a closed doors, passing out. I heard a thud. I heard a lot of commotion. I heard a glass break. And I hear what sounds like his body falling against the bathroom door. I open it to check on him, as I was accustomed to doing at that time. Johnny violently reacted to me opening the door, pushed it against me. It ran up over my toes, and he angrily came around the side of the door, swinging at me. I naturally pushed the door off of my feet.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. It's possible if someone was extremely intoxicated or this was an escalation, it's possible, but it just doesn't hold together. The way Johnny Depp could be lying too, but as I've been saying from the beginning, I'm not saying that's not a new thing, but the way that he tells the story is, it was another one of those times where we started to have a fight. I got away. I went to the bathroom, as I always did, as I did when I was a child. I locked myself in the bathroom. She was banging on the door, saying that I needed to talk to her, and I didn't want to fight with her. So all this story makes sense. It's very consistent with the audio recordings, with what both. There's no element of the story where you're like, what? Her story is he passes out, and she hears a thud, breaking glass, and somehow he falls against the door, and she just opens the door. She doesn't even kick it in. And then he does some super chaotic, unjustified, random beating of her. Now, if she had some story like, well, he was really upset because of this, and this, and I didn't see the signs of him escalate, something like the beatings that she says, aside from the jealousy ones, but especially this one anyway, it's just incoherent. Can abusive people fly off the handle for completely unknown reasons? Absolutely, particularly if they're intoxicated. Absolutely. So, it could have happened. And maybe that's the wild card that's screwing everything up, is that his intoxication was to such an extent that his behavior was so erratic and so problematic that it didn't make any sense, and thus she doesn't have anything to grab onto in terms of a coherent story. But yeah, it's so hard to grab onto the story and say, oh, okay, I could see that happening.
Responding to the pain and also to the awareness, the knowledge that he was coming for me. Johnny later later he blamed me in his inability to understand what happened, in that he was not in his right mind, and he misunderstood that interaction and tried to blame me for starting a physical fight between us. And he even...
Okay, then why did you admit in the audio that you started the fight? I mean, didn't that happen? Yeah, it's in that recording we just heard that they played to the Amber Heard attorneys, decided to play this audio to the jury, and says, Johnny Depp's, how are your toes? She says, I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. And he says, oh, your poor toes. And she says, because I think he thinks she was feigning the toe so he would relent on the door so she could get in. That's his story anyway. She says, that's the difference between me and you. You're an effing baby. And he says, because you start physical fights, I'm a baby because you... And she says, you're such a baby. Grow the F up, Johnny. He says, because you start physical fights? And she says, I did start a physical fight. I did start a physical fight. And he says, yeah, you did. So I had to get the F out of there. And she says, yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing, sarcastically. You know what? You are admirable every single time. What's your excuse when there's not a physical fight? Then what's the excuse then? Then what's the excuse then? Right, so she's saying when there's a physical fight, you always get away. How admirable of you. But what about when there's not a physical fight? What's your excuse then? When you escape then, you're always leaving me. So how in the world does that match up with what she's saying right now? She's saying he started the fight. There's an explicit excerpt that they just played where she says she started the fight, and in a non-sarcastic way. And if she had not started the fight, you would imagine she would say something else other than, I did start the fight. So how does this make any sense? It's possible. I just want to say, it's possible that she's being sarcastic. She's going along with it, I guess. But do we believe that her tone of voice in the audio recording is a person who's afraid of him? It doesn't seem like that. It could be. Can a victim be a bulldozer in a conversation at times? Sure. But it's just, it really, if you are pro Amber Heard, and I know some of you were at the beginning, and you hear this, it's like how it makes it hard to stay in the camp that she's telling the truth about all of this. You might be able to hold on to some shred of, well, some of this might be true. And I've been saying that. There's been a lot of things that she said where I'm like, yeah, that sounds believable. The non-abusive stuff, or at least the non-physical abusive stuff, the accounts of his use, his passing out, the potential drug-induced psychotic episodes, who knows? But she's saying right now that, anyway, it's now maybe she'll have an explanation. She'll be like, okay, well, it looks like I'm lying, jury, right now, but it's because of this.
To 1:30:07, and I'd like to move the admission.
All right, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 356B in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michelle.
I can't promise you that I'll be perfect. I can't promise you I won't get physical again.
Okay, so this is a clip from the same audio recording, the 4+ hours, and I'm going to try to find this spot in the transcript. Okay, so she says, I can't promise that I'll be perfect. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I effing sometimes get so mad I lose it. All right.
It's very manageable if you ice it really soon. Arnica is also a great remedy, arnica cream. And then if you want to cover up a bruise, you obviously put foundation first, concealer, and then on top of that, I used a bruise kit. Not a bruise kit, it's a theater makeup kit, a color correction kit, but I used...
Okay, so there's another notable moment. I've skipped over a lot of stuff. She made other allegations that he had been violent. They went down a road regarding the grumpy in the bed, that Johnny Depp was delusional, psychotic from his drug use, super obsessed about the grumpy, and that it was the dogs. They didn't really provide any kind of explanation as to why a witness said that Amber Heard told him that she did that in the bed. So hard to know, but now we're in the makeup zone where she's talking about covering up her bruise, and she names a brand of makeup that she used to cover up her bruises. And I think I heard that or maybe they might even testify later that that brand or that line wasn't even out at the time at which she claims to have been using it. Does that mean she's lying? Not necessarily. She could have forgotten which kind it was. I'm guessing that she has a lot of different makeup things around. I don't know. But she might just have a lot of different kinds of makeup and she got two brands mixed up. Who knows? Then she says, my bruise kit. Johnny Depp makes a face like, what? And she says, well, not my bruise kit, but, the kit I would use to cover up my bruises. And people would point that out, that that's clear evidence that she had a Freudian slip right there and revealed the truth that she called it her bruise kit, meaning that she would create bruises from nothing using this kit. And is that possible? Yeah, but it's more likely that what she's at least referring to is she called something a bruise kit because it was a kit to cover up her bruises. Who knows? It's possible. I think that the claims or the perspective of lying that I have been talking about previously in terms of the stories just not making a lot of sense, the presentation during the audio not matching up with what is typical for victims, is more convincing in terms of, or more demonstrative of what might have been happening behind the scenes. I think these little possible mix-ups or mistakes, they don't really hold a lot of weight for me. There's a lot of possibilities. Now, could she have used a bruise kit so to speak, to manufacture bruises. Yeah, but you would think that they would have been more elaborate, honestly, because the bruises weren't very noticeable. You would think that if you were really trying to go for it, you're really trying to lie. Now, sometimes liars are just really bad at lying, and so maybe there's that. Or she's really smart that she's like, well, if I make it too big, it's too noticeable. So just go down a road that she completely fabricated those bruises and she used makeup. And she is doing the makeup because presumably she has a lot of time. She's alone. She's in the bathroom. She's doing the makeup, and then she takes the picture. She looks at the picture. Doesn't really look quite good. So you think you would make it more elaborate. I don't know. Who knows? It would also be really hard to self-administer from your own sort of regular makeup to fabricate bruises, because from my understanding, those kinds of things are done with special effects artists that really know how to dial that in. So there's that. And that one bruise that she had across her nose, and then you see a little bit under her eye from being struck in the nose, that looked believable, and it didn't look like the sort of thing that people would fabricate. Again, I'm not a medical forensic person, so I don't know, but that bruise looked accurate to me anyway. Now, could a makeup artist who really knows what they're doing, a special effects, like someone in the film industry, really fabricate a bruise that looks very real? Absolutely. It happens all the time in film. But I'm guessing that she didn't have that ability or that resource. But I imagine that they did get physical at times. I mean, at the very least, he defended himself sometimes, and there would be incidental contact, like that one time where he claims he bear hugged her and there was some incidental contact, possibly with her nose, that she would have a bruise, and then she would try to cover it up in public, or him as well. He might have had bruises that he tried to cover up in public because they were trying to save face. They were trying to preserve their relationship. They weren't trying to, at least back then, go through all the tabloids. At a certain point, it's clear that she wanted to go through the tabloids because she submitted something apparently to TMZ, right? I don't know if that's true, but that's the allegation. But prior to that point, I think it's rational that they would be trying to both cover that up and protect their images with the public. And is it possible that she did have a bruise kit? I mean, maybe. It's more likely that, or what do I believe that the jury believes? I imagine that the jury would conclude, well, maybe there were moments where you did have bruises and you used makeup, but I have a hard time believing, even given your account, that there would be an elaborate routine to covering up the bruises, because it didn't seem like it happened that often, and the other claims that you make just don't seem to be credible. So is it possible that she used makeup to cover up bruises 3 or 4 times, and they were either defensive wounds from Johnny Depp, meaning he was defending, or they were times when he was being violent? At times, victims can be violent. Also, there is such a thing as bidirectional control and coercion. And all right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.